series of questions every day for the last 3-4 days, something like that. And
hang on, Dave. What up, secular America? How you doing? Anyway, me and Dave is talking. Anyway, what you on about the precept with the Bible thumping wingnut and all this. Yeah, I think with Mk's version, it's sort of like a drunken Eric Hovind just hosting a hangout every time, just acting as as deplorable as possible.
Because I think it's an interesting topic, and I think the problem is he's made it an ordeal because it's like the Satan Mkay, how do you know that? He's got this stock catchphrase of but could Satan be controlling your thoughts when you say that, or whatever his actual catchphrase is. And he's taking an interesting topic and just making it just unbearable to listen to partake in, because it could be interesting, but I think and the way he treated evidence, I kind of left my message and said, look, if you're going to behave like this, I don't want to be a part of this, so I left. I don't know if he's still doing that, or I mean, I'm not going to change his mind by leaving out of protest, but yeah, I don't think you should treat people like that.
I mean, it's not even a matter of protest. It's a matter of personal preference. I don't prefer to be asked the same ridiculous line of questioning over and over. And after I demonstrated that was clearly nonsense, I'm just gonna do the mature thing like what James Randi did when he found these people. Just walk away. I mean, I answered the questions. I played the little game, and I'm done. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey, Heretic, what's up?
Hey guys, everything's all right here. It's my obsession with Mk is continuing, and you're continuing it. Yeah, I'll keep on listening in. I plugged into my little tablet this morning. I woke up early for some bloody reason, and I was listening to his hangout from yesterday. That was a recording, which was Cliff Jumper is a patient guy, and Darwin's was on there. I'm not sure whether you were there, Dave.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
And Darwin's was talking about aliens. I've just put up a video about it. I think Artist said something about the Goldilocks zone, and Darwin's did his usual. Good. I'm glad you mentioned that. And then he went on as if all aliens and every alien that we would ever meet would necessarily be made out of the same composition that we are, and therefore every Goldilocks zone would require exactly the same constants and parameters in such small fractions, and therefore was saying it was such a small bit.
I wonder where is he getting the probabilities on that?
I don't know, but the bit I basically fell off my chair while listening to it, because his whole worldview is on the basis of an eternal, invisible, omnipresent, omniscient, non-material thing that rules the world, created it, and is not made out of the same bit of us. So there is, his belief system is already there, that there is something and an ability to do that. But yeah, I nearly fell off my chair when he said that.
Yeah. Not to interrupt you again, but not to interrupt you again. But I remember him having the same discussion with Joe Sanse, and he even said that that he didn't even accept the Big Bang theory. And it's like, well, I mean, so why are you asking questions about cosmology when you don't even accept it? And that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that it's an argument about cosmology, that what I was talking about. The Big Bang is something else I find interesting, but just his mere argument that he can only accept the uniformity of nature at all times in all places on the basis of how it is here, when there is this big thing that rules his world that does not conform to the uniformity of nature.
yeah, it's sort of like the whole fine tuning argument and everything like that, like an argument from design or something like that. But I mean, if this is the case, I mean, this is, I mean, we're talking about a very deadly and inhospitable universe that really doesn't care about whether or not we exist. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not possible that life could exist anywhere else, but it's kind of hard, that we could survive. I mean, you're gonna need a very old, very big universe for life to emerge. After billions of years, we did. I mean, that doesn't mean universe is fine tuned for life. It's actually the other way around.
Oh, I totally agree with that. But I don't necessarily hold to the view that alien life is necessarily intelligent alien life. Just some living amoeba or a blade of grass or something. That to me is alien life if it is somewhere else. And it's an indication that there are possibilities out there that can still go on without necessarily being intelligent and having minds in any way, shape, or form.
The trouble is, I don't think he was even making a very interesting point. He's got the new game. Well, I don't know if it's a new game, but the game he's playing is just trying to get someone to say something and then say, "Okay, good, good, good. Now that you've said that, what's your view on this?" And then he's just trying to say, "Well, how come you have one position on one thing and a different position on a different thing?" So, for example, I think it was about I can't remember what it was, but basically trying to say, well, why are you so selective about this? And yet in this case, I think it was about the probability of alien life being, statistically likely because of the size of the universe, something like that. That was Cliff Jumper's point. And that was in response to another point you made. But basically, I was trying to say, well, hang on a minute, how can you say that, that alien life exists, even though we don't have experience of it, but God doesn't exist because you don't have experience of it? Something like that. I think it was something like, you don't experience alien life, but you say it's likely that it exists, statistically likely it exists. So why are you contradicting yourself? So all he's amounting to is a tu quoque, which just irritated me because from basically as soon as he started saying that, I was like in the chat, I'm going to cut to the chase. He's just going to call you, just say you've made a contradiction. This is a tu quoque. Let's move on. I don't care if he's contradicting himself. And yeah, so it's not even a sophisticated game he's playing. He's just saying, well, why have you got two different views about? Why have you got one view about one thing and one thing about another thing? Isn't that a contradiction? But so I'm in an irritated mood tonight. So
you lost me at tu quoque.
Oh, sorry. It just means
is that a game involving smashing a ball through some hoops or something?
Something like that. Yeah. It's basically an appeal to hypocrisy. So it's saying you don't meet your own standard, or you're not applying the same standard consistently. So, for example, if I say, I don't believe in God because I don't have experience of God, and he'd say, well, do you have experience of God?
By the way, I'm just going to say I shared mods with you guys, just so you know.
Right, I'm kicking everyone out.
Yeah, you can do a Rizzler like you did on whatever hang it was yesterday. That was in the side chat though, wasn't it? I would like to discuss. I'm really confused by the Big Bang. Really confused with it, and at some point later on, I'd like to come back to it if that's all right.
Just literally watch it like the beginning of the Big Bang Theory, like the show on the CW. You'll figure it out in a minute.
It's something quite nice, I think.
No, I mean there's an extra bit that I'm really interested in. I'd like to bring it up later on, once if the conversation goes down to irrelevance and nothing left, then I'd just like your ideas.
You could probably write everything I know about the Big Bang on a postage stamp. So I'm not the person to ask. But actually, are you in? I'm guessing you sound British. So there's an excellent documentary at the moment. I think Horizon. Oh, it's just finished now. I think 9 o'clock about dark energy. So that might have helped. So it was on iPlayer, but.
Is it on BBC?
It was on BBC Two. Yes, the Horizon thing.
All right, I might well have a look at it.
But I hope it's on. If it's not on iPlayer, then I'll try and track it down somewhere. But I don't know if I kind of had it on in the background, and it was mentioning how general relativity just changed the games for everything. And I don't know. It might not be relevant to the Big Bang, but
and it might not be relevant to the specific question that I've got around it. But
okay,
I'll bring it up later.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think yeah, what Darwin's deity is just trying to say is it's basically a version of the taxicab fallacy, which is basically saying you hold this standard, but when it suits you, you get out of the cab kind of thing. So it's sort of, I'm going to keep going with this line of reasoning until it no longer serves my purpose, and then you kind of get out, like a cab or a taxi. And so yeah, the tu quoque is saying, well, you're not applying the standard consistently. So if you don't believe in God because you haven't got an experience of God, why do you believe that aliens exist when you don't have experience of aliens? And I don't care about how consistent the position is. Well, I don't. I care about how consistent a position is. I don't care if someone is applying consistently. But he's trying to think that an inconsistent use of a position is an internally inconsistent worldview, and it's not. They're not necessarily the same thing. You can just be unaware of the inconsistency. And if he wants to point it out and say, "Oh yeah, you're right. I've been inconsistent. I now think X." That's probably the best you can hope for. But instead he does it in a confrontational way and then makes people feel defensive and say, no, I have to defend this position. When you don't, you just have to say, oh no, you're right, I didn't see it like that before. But people aren't going to do that because he's a knobhead. So
Yeah, I mean there are defensible inconsistencies when you bring in different parameters. So different parameters can lead to different reactions and whatever. So it's completely different when you're on the surface of the Earth to when you're 700 meters underwater. I mean, there are so many different things that are going on, and it can lead to the concept of inconsistencies. But when it comes to hypocrisy of like what he was saying there, I just can't accept it. That sort of stuff really just does my head in, really.
But I think because I agreed with at least some of what he was saying. I kind of got on board with some of it. And it was annoying that Cliff Jumper and so on were just falling into the trap and just being confrontational for the sake of it, I think. So if I had said it, it would have been a different response. But I think there's ways you can say, look, you're internally inconsistent because of this. Or for example, if I say, I've never seen the evening star, okay, and someone points out to me, the evening star's Venus, and I go, yeah. And then them saying, so have you seen Venus? And me saying yes. Then logically it would follow then that I've seen the evening star because they're identical. It's like me saying, well, I've just used an example, so I can't use another example. But that's the way of pointing out, saying, okay, you accept that the evening star is identical to Venus, and you've seen Venus, so therefore it must follow that you've seen the evening star, morning star, whichever one it is. So there's ways to do that. That's what he's trying to say. It's saying, just based on your own what you've just said, here's what you should follow, and say, look, in order to be consistent, then you can do that without being confrontational and just being like you're accusing someone of being. I don't think he did rightly accuse him of it. I got bored by the end, so he might have said it at the end, but I don't think he said you're being inconsistent. It was just more a case of, look, you've said something. Now here's a completely irrelevant topic where you hold a different standard when you should hold the same standard, or if you do hold the same standard, you wouldn't hold to the position you do now. And for me, it just seems like especially when there's like 9 other people in the hangout or 8 other people in the hangout that want to have a chat about something interesting, I just have infinitely better things to do than listen to Darwin's deity accuse someone of being inconsistent and then spend an hour trying to demonstrate it to people who don't want to hear it. So yeah, people much more.
Yeah, I didn't get to listen to the rest of the hangout because I had to go to work, but it was just that particular bit where he was making his certain claims, and then it's like, what?
Yeah, it was a bit weird that he couldn't wrap his head around different life in different. I mean, I think he used like constants. They weren't constants.
Yeah, it was as if his whole idea of alien life was the comic book type of thing. A little green man with long fingers and long toes, no ears and big eyes.
The greys, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and very thin. So yeah, it was just really strange to listen to that. I'm sure that he will improve his argument on that at some point.
I love your optimism.
He'll have to.
You say that, but we start talking about Mkay, and he's not well. It's been a few days, to be fair. He might update his argument or go on to stage 2 of the pre-sub, but I don't know. I'm not that optimistic about it. I think Darwin's has a formula, and he basically reminds me of I don't know if this is libel, but he reminds me of a Catholic priest who's been, molesting children. He'll just keep going around until he gets caught, and people like force him off. I think that's what happened to Pal Talk, where he was basically forced off that and just found a new people who weren't aware of him. But then obviously the Power Rangers joined, and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it just seems like he's going to get away with it until people are sick of it and drive him away and just don't talk to him, or until he gets thoroughly spanked in a debate and just can't deal with the thought of going another hangout. So.
But I mean, he's charismatic in his own way, in the same way that G-Man, being a total tosser, he's charismatic as well. They've got a lot of background and a lot of knowledge. They can argue on lots of different things. And
I wouldn't put G-Man in that category, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but G-Man knows the Bible, but he's charismatic enough as well. And he's a complete tosser, and he does some bloody stupid stuff. And when he doesn't have an answer to somebody, he just kicks them out.
Yeah.
But Darwin's is prepared to have a discussion with anybody unless they are what he calls a troll.
Well, the trouble, his criteria of troll is anyone who doesn't follow his script. So, for example, he thinks I don't think he's overtly said I'm a troll, but because I question him on his use of the laws of logic, as if there's one monolithic set of the laws of logic, which there aren't. Whenever I bring that up, he just tries to dismiss me and say, no, I'm talking to whoever I'm talking to, someone else, because I'm not playing by his rules. I'm now, blacklisted. But
yeah. What I would really like to see is somebody just completely ignore him. So he starts asking questions and he starts directing something at somebody, and that person just keeps quiet until everything's silent, and then that person would just start a conversation with somebody completely different without answering any of his questions. I would love to see that, because I think Darwin's would just go apoplectic. I think his head would explode.
Yeah, I don't think he'd come to terms with that. But I would like to challenge you on the notion that G-Man knows the Bible. I don't think he does. I think he knows important passages that he needs to know for his specific view of the Bible. Because I remember having him with a debate with J.D. Kane, and he didn't know anything about the resurrection. And I'm like,
I can't disagree with you there, Dave. I mean, I don't watch much of G-Man. He knows some bits of it. I'll grant that. Whether he knows much of it, yeah, you probably got me there.
Okay. See how easy it is for me to just, point out something, and then we didn't have to have an hour-long exchange about saying, well, this is what you said. Let me quote what I just said. Let me go back in the Hangout and say, this is exactly what you just said. And then, it doesn't take much. And the thing is, if you'd have said, oh no, I've seen a video of him doing this, I'd have said, oh no, he does know the Bible. Trouble is, I haven't subscribed to G-Man for about 4 or 5 months.
Whenever I've seen G-Man, he's very good with his mouth, and he just keeps going, and he rambles and this, that, and the other. And he comes out with some stuff, and I don't know the Bible enough to know whether he knows much about what he's talking about. You may well be absolutely right, and I could be totally wrong, and he's just picking up on little bits and this, that, and the other. But he's charismatic with it, even if he is a twat. I mean, pardon my French, but hey, so be it. And Mkay, as far as I'm concerned, is G-Man's bastard spawn. He's nowhere near G-Man's level, and that's possibly and probably one of the biggest insults that you could give him.
I know, yeah. Saying you're a poor man's G-Man is literally like the worst, the lowest of the low. If you're aspiring to be G-Man, then yeah. But carry on, sorry.
No, that was it. It's just the concept of born-agains are the most fundamental, really, and fundamentally stupid, if you ask me.
Although the ironic thing is, the more fundamental, at least on YouTube, I don't know about the real world, I don't really do this in the real world, but the more fundamentalist you see them on YouTube, and I'm thinking of G-Man in particular, the less they actually know about the wider context of Christianity. Now, for example, what he knows about, what was going on in the first century. I doubt he would understand, where would he place Jesus in the sort of socio-political context, for example. Now, that's not, it's kind of alluded to in the Bible, but not very explicitly. In Acts, it kind of mentions, the census of Quirinius and how that relates to Judas the Galilean and Theudas and things like that. But if you asked him, what was going on then? Why did this author say this? And I just think it's because the fundamentalist mentality of this is the divinely inspired word of God. They kind of forget that these are authors that have different theological biases, different agendas, writing to different audiences in a different style at different times. And I think when you look at it as sort of this single voice, you kind of lose the intricacies of, well, why is Paul saying this, and why is Mark saying that, and why is Luke saying this, and why is John saying this, and why is Peter, well, the author of Peter, well, no, I don't think any of them were authored. Anyway, sorry, got distracted. But yes, why are they each saying different things? And why is Paul saying this in 1 Corinthians, and why is Mark saying this in his gospel? And for them, it's just they just wipe, brush it under the carpet and say, oh no, it's just all the same author of God. It's just different, people. They may say it's different perspectives. That's probably the most they'll say, but they don't realize it's different context, different, purpose for writing it, and different, times and different audiences that we're gonna, I just think. And I think you appreciate it more when you don't look at it like that. You look at it as a sort of historical document that has nuggets of history, I think. But I think you just you lose the elegance of it, the importance of it, when you just treat it as this single, voice that's going from Adam and the creation of the universe, when Moses apparently wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, to the last book which was written, which I can't actually remember, to be honest. You'd think it was Revelation, but I don't think it was. I'm just thinking it's this single voice of this is what the Bible says, when it's not. It's this is what this author said at this time, for this context, in this situation, to mean this thing for this group of people. And that's very, very selective. When Paul says in Romans that, everyone knows that God exists, without excuse, that kind of thing. He's writing to the Romans. This is a letter to the Romans, specifically pagan Romans kind of thing. So when you try and treat it as, no, this is what the Bible teaches about whatever, I just think it does a disservice to what it actually is as a document.
I totally agree. I found it fascinating when was just on the start of his trip into being a born-again fundamentalist again, and he was doing his stuff on Romans. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. And so I started looking at the background of it and the rationale as to why Paul was writing to the Romans, what had been happening there, what had happened to the Jews, what were the Christians, the Gentiles actually doing to the Jews then, and what was it that Paul was saying to them that they had to change? Why is it that Paul was berating these people? And M just wasn't that interested. And it's got more and more and more like that. I mean, when people are answering him, either in his hangout or by text on the Google Plus links and whatever, he basically, on the text, he goes, well, I read the first line and then I couldn't be asked to read the rest of what your answer was. There was a brilliant one today, Cliff Stamp, who is trying desperately to defend Mkay at the moment, and I've got to give him his due. I mean, with him going for so long, it's got to be hard work. But he's trying desperately. He wrote this long stuff about what arguments M could have, where it could lead to problems. If he starts going down one way, he could end up having a problem. But if he keeps it at this level, he's on firm ground type of thing. And I didn't agree with what Cliff wrote, but then later on down, it's like, well, thanks for that, Cliff, says M. But I read the first couple of lines, and then I TLDR basically. And it's like, well, there you go. It's like, this guy is more interested in having a comfortable level of ignorance rather than expanding his own understanding and wisdom.
I find that a very sort of persistent problem as well. I remember, I think, twice on my videos and once on Antithetics and X's that I know of, that's that prefix for that Matt Bell has said, I watched the first 2 minutes or 30 seconds, you made this claim, I didn't agree with that, so I stopped watching. This is a video I did about the resurrection. It was like 45 minutes long, and I think he gave it to like 2 minutes. And I was like, okay, you've missed 43 minutes of it, but you've probably got the gist of it by 2 minutes into it. But Yeah, it seems like this nature of, like you say, it's this comfortable ignorant or comfortable bubble of I don't need to address it because they've already said something that I'm not on board with or whatever it is. I think, and I think it's a shame because I think I always try and, I mean, I get like 1,000 messages a day, so I can't really keep on top of everything. But I do try and, if someone at least is addressing something of my video or a point I've made, I do try and at least read it. I don't always respond because, like I say, it would just literally take the rest of my life. But I do try and acknowledge it and think about it, and if it's particularly complex, then think about it for a day or two. But yeah, to not even finish reading, especially when someone's taking the time for it. So like Cliff is very, very good at distilling down the important bits, but also just putting it in a very easy to understand way. So if you can't deal with that, I think there's people who are a lot worse at that. So I think it's a shame that he's genuinely, I assume, genuinely trying to help, and it's a bit of a slap in the face to say, yeah, I got bored after the first sentence or whatever, and
yeah, I mean, I think he's going to alienate even the most ardent of his current supporters with his insistent, monotonous shite.
I know, because I said in the chat and the hangout itself that if you're going to treat people like this, then I'm not going to partake in this. And I think if we're going to, same with Darwin's deity, if we're going to continue, then the rules have got to change. Either you let people speak, you let people answer how you want them to answer. So it's not always a case of yes, no answers. And I think if you're going to behave like that, then I'm happy to boycott things, Even though Hangouts don't run 24/7, sometimes it's nice to have a chat. Like, it's 9:30 in the evening here. I can't really bother going out or doing whatever. I don't really fancy, doing that thing, so I'll see if anyone's at Hangout. And if it's Mkay, booting people and being disrespectful, then I don't have time for that. So something's got to change, and if it's just my small gesture of saying, well, I'm not joining in, I mean, I'm not saying, I didn't put in a chat or I didn't say everyone else should do the same thing as me, because they can do whatever they want, but I don't want to be associated with that. And,
I did find that fascinating, though. I mean, there was the bit Cliff Jumper was being exceptionally patient and very, very good, and he was slammed by Darwin's, and then as soon as Darwin's was doing the same back to him, he wasn't getting any help from anybody. And then Mkay decided to demand that unless Cliff Jumper answered his list of questions on a yes or no basis without any explanation or anything extra, then he would be booted. Oh, I nearly threw my tablet at the wall. It's like I just found it. Oh, I found it sickening that somebody feels that they've got that power. This is supposed to be a debating area. It's about discussion. It's about honesty. It's about putting yourself on the line to show your arguments or to just have a discussion. And I don't find it honest when that other shit goes on.
Yeah, nothing but agreement from here. I think I just, especially, like you say, it's meant to be called the Great Debate, not the Great Yes/No game of, how do you answer my series of 3, 4, 5, 10, 100 questions in this yes/no way? Because, I mean, I reject, the law of excluded middle, which is basically this idea that this is black and white kind of thing. So a proposition is true or its negation is true. I think there's a lot more intricacy than that it's shades of grey, a lot of these things, or sometimes you need an explanation to say it's a yes but or a no but kind of thing. And yeah, just to ignore that and to boot people who are going to say, well, I'm going to say yes, but here's my explanation. And yeah, he was unbroadcasting him when he said possibly yes, and then he was in another sentence, and then unbroadcast him. And I just thought, this isn't why I came on YouTube. This is why I joined Hangouts, to be interrogated by people and then kicked out. Well, obviously it wasn't happening to me, but yes, and he was in another sentence, and then unbroadcast.
Yeah, that's where psychology is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I love your avatar, the principles of psychology. I don't know much about psychology, but I like to think that I know possibly what might be going through somebody's mind as to why they're saying certain things in a certain way. Principles of psychology. I don't know much about psychology. Oh God, that's my voice coming through in an echo.
Why they're saying certain things in a certain way.
Okay.
Because of psychology, I don't know much about.
I'm sorry, I've had to mute you. God, I hate listening to my own voice on that.
You scared the hell out of me then. I was like, he's got the exact same voice you do. And then I can realize I'm not with it today.
Maybe that's how Justin Potts got away with it. He got somebody else to do it, you know. Or maybe he did it as a totally separate thing, and then somebody was just pressing a tape recorder at the right time. Who knows? I can't even remember what I was saying now. Something about psychology. I've got no background in it whatsoever, but I do like it because I do like thinking about the reasons why people might be choosing to do certain things, and I feel I've got a little bit of affinity towards it, particularly with children. I vividly remember my childhood and my reasons for doing certain things which other people would see as completely irrational, and now I look at my children and I see them doing the same sort of thing, and I can't berate them for it at all because I did the same and I had weird things going through my mind, but I can talk to them about, okay, what does it mean when you do this? What's the implication of doing it? Rather than getting at them. Whereas with a lot of other people that I know, suddenly they just start shouting at their kids for doing something. And I'm thinking that's not going to get the right result. They're not going to respond in the way that you want by doing that because you constantly berate your kids. And it's that sort of stuff. Although I've got no background in psychology, and when it comes to some of these people on G+, I've no idea where they're coming from.
I think, particularly psychology, probably more so than any subject, everyone is kind of a psychologist. You know, we have to navigate around a social world, so we have to, you know, understand facial expressions and non-verbal communication and stuff like that that we need to navigate around. So we need to understand how people think and how people feel. And sometimes you not overtly say, "I'm really annoyed at the moment." You know, people are very subtle, and you kind of have to pick up these clues. So if I say something to do with psychology that you don't see as, if you don't experience that, then I'm probably doing my job wrong, because, you know, the whole point of psychology is to explain why people do what they do. So if I bring up something that you don't experience or have no experience of, then you should probably question, well, is that even something that happens to people? And so the whole point of psychology is to understand, you know, the world we live in as people. So it's intuitive in the sense of we spend most of our waking life with people and talking to people and interacting with people. So we kind of get what people do and why they, well, we can kind of guess why they do things. And sometimes it's not overtly obvious, but whereas things like quantum mechanics and chemistry, biology, physics, a lot of these other disciplines, we don't have experience of. I don't have experience of black holes, so it's very counterintuitive. But people, you know, if I say, oh, do you know people in social groups that hold to conspiracy theories are more likely to hold dogmatic beliefs, and you go, oh, you know, I kind of got that, Dave, you know, it's kind of obvious. So I think that's why people think psychology is common sense, because we're just so used to dealing with people in our everyday interactions. But I think it's fascinating, and I think, especially my kind of area of research, which is broadly speaking the psychology beliefs, but more narrowly science communication, I think it makes good dinner party conversations when it comes to you know, psychology beliefs. And as I mentioned before, I'm a research assistant for conspiracy theories, so chatting with people about conspiracy theories, because it's one of the things that people have an opinion on, and some people have a really strong opinion, and people go, oh yeah, I heard this, you know, I watched this documentary about this, and everyone's kind of got a story about it. So but yeah, some of the topics on here, when it gets into real sort of hardcore philosophy, I have to admit I'm incredibly, I mean, I don't know why I get this, people get the impression I'm a philosopher. I literally have never done it sort of at any level, literally never done a minute of it in any sort of academic setting. I've got a book that I'm working through, an old kind of intro to philosophy book, I should say, and it's interesting, but people like Ozzy and Gary Edwards and, you know, Fox in the Know, Bert Poole, you know, these big hitters in the sort of great debate, Alex Malpass, you know, the new kid on the block kind of thing, they know a lot more about this than me, so I'm just sort of, you know, get in well with that group and make it look like I'm more intelligent than I am.
Tell me, what do you know about office politics and the concept that the only people that get to the top are psychopaths.
Oh yeah, the snake. Is it Snakes in Suits? Was that what the book was called? Something like that. Anyway, I think there's something to it. I think it's probably a little bit reductionist to say that's the one reason, but I think you can kind of see the logic behind that. Of I'm going to dick over everyone I can until I get to the top. That's kind of sort of mentality that psychopaths have. It's just it's just channeling it in a positive way. In the same way, I think if depressed people took up poetry, they might be incredibly good by articulating their innermost thoughts and saying it into poetry. It's kind of finding I don't know what the word is, finding an outlet for their sort of feelings kind of thing. So for example, I've got an obsessive personality, that's kind of part of my thing. So if I channel it in the right way, I do loads of work and do really good, whatever, research or whatever. Or if I do it in a bad way, I get distracted by other things and I get obsessed with, playing PlayStation, or I got obsessed with Bob's Burgers the other week and I watched the entire of the 6th series of it. And I don't even particularly like it, just got obsessed with it. So it's about channeling it in a good way. So I think when it comes to do psychopaths make the best sort of CEOs kind of thing, the answer is I think it probably doesn't hinder them. I think it's a case of if it's channeled in the right way, obviously, and yeah, I think there's something to it. I think there's more to it than just that, but yeah, I think there's something to it.
Yeah, I think so as well. I work in a massive organisation, and the people that I see that just fly up the ladder, it's like, oh my God, you are joking. Anyway, who's it that's in it? We got Creatard Killer, and I think Wolf is away, isn't he?
I think so, yes. Yeah, he was BRBing a while ago.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I do prefer this sort of relaxed atmosphere than 9 people trying to talk at once, so I'm not complaining. We're all...
Yeah, let me talk about my Big Bang thing.
Oh, yeah, bring that up, yeah.
Okay, so Einstein was the one that proposed that the Big Bang came from a black hole. Yeah?
I thought it was a later... I think the Big Bang was kind of building upon implications of Einstein rather than actually Einstein, but I may be wrong. But if your general view is sorry,
I saw it recently that it was Einstein that said something along the lines of he believed that the Big Bang came from a black hole, a gigantic black hole, having taken in so much and then got so small that it just had to pop effectively. Boom. And that started it. Now the bit that I don't get is the idea and the concept that there was no time and no space before then. Because the only thing that we do know about black holes is that they happen within the universe. They are not the universe itself. So in order for a black hole to actually exist, to be able to reduce, to get so big and then reduce and then go boom, there had to be a universe there in the first place.
Yeah, I would agree with that, or at least intuitively that would make sense. In the same way when I was watching this is my academic level, when I was watching Family Guy, and it was like Stewie and Byron created the universe by going back in time and then having to explode their time machine or whatever it was. But then they had to exist in the universe in order to do that kind of thing. So they had to exist in the universe to make the universe, this kind of paradox of, you need to have the thing in order to create the thing you need to have kind of thing. Yeah. I would say when it comes to time and big bangs, time and black holes, or time in general, our intuition isn't necessarily the best judge. For example, the B theory of time is completely counterintuitive. If you've watched Interstellar, that's predicated on the B theory of time, that there is no privilege now. There isn't sort of this now, objective now in the universe. There's just different sort of frames of reference, and my now for you is different for your now kind of thing. Real fucked up shit kind of thing like that. that simultaneity doesn't really exist. And things that happen now in a billion light years away happened 200 years ago or whatever it is. But yeah, the notion of the Big Bang being an explosion of a black hole, you'd have to then push the question back of saying, well, where was that black hole before the Big Bang, or was it even coherent idea, or if that the first state was a black hole, is that just a brute fact? Should we just have to accept the fact that I don't think we have to accept that fact, but
it also leads to these things, because there's the recent stuff about the Hubble telescope, or whichever telescope it was, looking for a long time at a very specific area within, very, very small area within space, going, we're going to be able to look back 13.9 billion years or whatever it was to the time just before the Big Bang. And they keep on looking, and then they go, right, we've looked back this far, but what we see is exactly what we see now. We see formations, we see all these stars. Instead of just being blackness and lots of shit flying around trying to link up together, we're seeing wholly formed planets and stars and this, that, and the other. And so the concept of the Big Bang actually coming from a black hole that was in an already formed universe that just goes boom and sends a load of shit out, that starts hitting a bit of resonance with me, because actually these things were there already. They were there already, and this black hole was just in a different part of the universe, and it just spewed a load of shit out, which let us actually be, or that's what we think. But actually, because we can only see back to 13.4 billion years ago when this Big Bang was, prior to that there was already a universe there, and it was there already anyway. All that this thing had done was just returned a load of shit back to the universe that it had already eaten up. And therefore you would expect that the universe was already there and was already created, and there was lots of stuff there. It just sort of starts going around in this infinite regress within my head, and I find it really difficult to try and get my head around it. But the big concept that I just can't accept is that time and space started at the Big Bang. I just can't accept that, because there had to be something there beforehand. It wasn't a case that there was nothing there beforehand and there was no time and there was no space. To me, there was all of that stuff, and that's where something happened. Whatever it is that happened, there was this explosion, this thing that happened at that time that has led to our universe right now. Prior to that, it was all the same bloody thing all over again. It's just that this thing happened.
I think that's certainly a view that people can hold to, this sort of cyclical nature of, continuous birth and rebirth. But I think your take on it is that there was already a sort of, I guess, a meta universe, this kind of background stuff that the black hole was in, that just sort of spewed out I don't know about a universe, but stuff. But yeah, I think the whole idea of when you get into like the physics of time and what it means to have time and space, I just think the idea of time is a very intuitive notion, but our intuitions can often be wildly different to what the universe actually is. So for example, if there was literally nothing else in existence and you were just floating around in space, there was nothing else, your intuition is there was I don't know if you'd pass time, but then how would you know if you were passing through space? I guess if you're at a constant velocity, then you wouldn't even feel, like you were moving. Like in the same way you don't feel if you're driving at a constant speed, it's only acceleration and deceleration that you feel it. And if there was no sort of reference point, how would you know if you're actually moving, kind of thing? And it's very bizarre to think that, intuitively, when I'm moving my head around now, or from, I can kind of feel it. But if there's no reference point, like nothing to say, oh, I've just been past that street light, I must be moving. It's a case of there's literally nothing else. There's nothing else to sort of say, you know. And the same with time, you know, the idea of time. Our intuition would still be there in the sense of, well, I've been doing whatever, you know, even if I'm not moving, I've been doing whatever I have for however long, but then, you know, time, our perception of time is not necessarily accurate. So for me, it's completely counterintuitive, and physicists are just a different species of humans that kind of either understand it or bluff their way through it enough to sound like they understand it. Whereas for me, my puny little brain just doesn't quite get it. So I feel your sympathy of